casting directors telling us, no, a black man should do this. No, look at me, homeboy. Shonda Kwanda Nikwa, I want my money. Say, I want my money.
Hollywood loves to celebrate its pioneers, but every once in a while, you stumble across a story that doesn't add up. Think about it. Directors like Jordan Peele, Ryan Coogler, Issa Rae, and Ava DuVernay are rightly praised as innovators. They're given platforms, interviews, awards, and headlines that tell the world they changed the game. But what if I told you the game was already changed decades earlier by a man Hollywood did everything in its power to erase?
I've auditioned for I knew I was never going to win an Oscar for playing I'm Sally Field in that last movie. Thank you, Academy.
That man is Robert Townsend. If you've ever watched Hollywood Shuffle or The 5 Heartbeats, you've seen just a fraction of what he was capable of. He was an actor, a comedian, a writer, and a director. One of those rare artists who could do it all. And yet, despite breaking barriers before anyone else, he was blacklisted, marginalized, and systematically erased from the story of black cinema.
Cosby hired Robert Townsend to shoot Bill Cosby was set to do a TV show on Netflix.
I remember that.
He reached out to Bill Cosby, I want you to do it.
Right.
Nobody was Robert Townsend's shoe.
This wasn't an accident. It wasn't just bad luck. Hollywood has a way of rewarding the voices that play along and burying the ones that push too hard against the system. So why was Townsend, the man who opened the doors for others, deliberately pushed out of the spotlight? Why was his name written out of the story he helped create? This is the story Hollywood never wanted you to hear, and the truth is even more shocking than you think. Robert Townsend wasn't just another struggling actor. By the mid-1980s, he was already making waves. His breakout role came in A Soldier's Story, 1984, a powerful drama that also featured Denzel Washington. For Townsend, this wasn't just a role. It was proof that he could compete at the highest level, that he belonged in films with weight, depth, and substance.
So we were going through it, and rather than go crazy, we said, the Black Acting School was a part of my stand-up when I was, starting out at the Improv. I used to do a whole routine about, going to these auditions, and then Keenan came up with the idea and said, we should do a full out.
For the first time, he thought he might actually have a career in Hollywood, but the illusion didn't last long. Instead of receiving offers from meaningful characters, Townsend found himself shoved into a humiliating cycle of auditions for stereotypes. Casting directors didn't see his training at Second City. They didn't care that he could perform Shakespeare or improv comedy. They looked at his skin and saw only the pimp, the jive talker, the drug dealer, or the comic relief who existed only to make white characters look smarter. Imagine spending years perfecting your craft, only to walk into a room where someone asks you to sound more urban or play a clownish caricature with gold teeth. That was Townsend's reality.
When you love what you do, you just want to, I had a pure heart, as an actor. I just want to do everything. And I didn't know that they would put me in a box. And that's, and Hollywood Shuffle was about breaking out of that box.
The unspoken rule was clear. If you wanted to work in Hollywood, you had to play their game, even if it meant degrading yourself. But Townsend wasn't built to stay silent. Instead of letting the rejection destroy him, he began to take notes. Every audition that felt insulting, every character name that sounded like a joke, every time he was asked to act like something less than human, he wrote it down. What most people would have buried in shame, Townsend turned into fuel, and that fuel would spark something that Hollywood never saw coming. Pain has a way of either breaking you or sharpening you. For Townsend, it became a weapon. He began turning his humiliating audition stories into stand-up routines at comedy clubs. Night after night, audiences laughed as he revealed the absurdity of Hollywood stereotypes. It was comedy, but it was also a mirror, forcing people to see the ugly truth. His friend Keenan Ivory Wayans saw the potential and pushed him further. "Why don't we take this and turn it into a sketch?" That sketch became Black Acting School, a biting satire where Black actors were trained to degrade themselves for white approval. What started as a stand-up bit grew into a bold artistic vision. Townsend realized he wasn't just mocking Hollywood, he was exposing it. This wasn't just comedy, it was resistance disguised as laughter. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized he had enough material for an entire film. A movie that wouldn't just show the problem, but hold up a mirror so sharp it would be impossible to ignore. That film became Hollywood Shuffle. But Townsend was facing a massive problem. No studio in Hollywood was going to fund a movie that called them out for their racism. The system was designed to protect itself. So Townsend did the unthinkable. He decided to make it himself, maxing out credit cards, working odd jobs, and pouring every dollar he had into a film that could either make him or break him completely. It was a risk few people would ever dare take, but Townsend wasn't just making a movie. He was fighting for survival. When Hollywood Shuffle premiered in 1987, it wasn't just another independent film. It was an earthquake. Townsend's fearless satire ripped Hollywood's hypocrisy wide open. The now legendary Black Acting School segment showed actors being taught to shuffle, grin, and speak in jive talk for white audiences. It was hilarious, but it was also horrifying because everyone in the room knew it wasn't far from reality. Critics were stunned. Roger Ebert praised Townsend's resourcefulness, calling the film a triumph of willpower and creativity. Gene Siskel and Ebert gave it 2 thumbs up. The New York Times and Los Angeles Times praised it as an essential commentary on race in Hollywood. For a moment, it looked like Townsend had cracked the code. He had done the impossible, funded his own film, taken on the system, and actually won. But Hollywood isn't built to reward truth-tellers. Behind the applause was something darker. Townsend started noticing meetings drying up. Opportunities that had once been in reach suddenly vanished. The industry praised him publicly, but punished him privately. He had made the mistake of saying out loud what everyone else knew but never admitted, that Hollywood thrived on stereotypes and quotas. And that truth would cost him far more than he imagined. After Hollywood Shuffle, Townsend should have been Hollywood's golden child. Instead, he was quietly blacklisted. While other directors with successful debuts were being offered studio deals, Townsend was forced to scrape together money for his own projects. Even when he directed Eddie Murphy's Raw, a comedy special that became the highest-grossing stand-up film in history, Hollywood refused to give him the same respect they gave others. He could be trusted to direct someone else's vision, but not his own. The trap was perfectly designed. Acknowledge his talent just enough to avoid being called racist, but never give him the resources to make another Hollywood Shuffle. Townsend had broken the industry's unspoken rule, don't bite the hand that feeds you. And so, Hollywood bit back. It wasn't a public takedown. There was no official blacklist with his name on it. It was more insidious than that. Calls stopped coming. Meetings got canceled. Studios loved his work, but couldn't find the right project. Townsend was being erased in real time. But instead of walking away, he decided to fight harder. His next project wouldn't just test his persistence. It would define his legacy. Townsend poured everything into his next film, The 5 Heartbeats. Inspired by real Motown groups like The Temptations and The Dells, it was a story about friendship, ambition, and the painful realities of the music industry. Townsend wanted to tell the truth, to show both the triumphs and the struggles of Black musicians who had built American music but were often exploited by it. Studios, of course, had other ideas. They wanted to cut out the difficult parts, the racism, the exploitation, the church roots. They wanted a sanitized, feel-good musical with no edge. Townsend refused. He'd already seen what happened when he compromised. His voice was ignored. This time, he fought to keep the story authentic. After years of battles, 20th Century Fox finally agreed to finance the film, but with a reduced budget and limited marketing. When it premiered in 1991, The Five Heartbeats was a revelation. The music soared. The performances were unforgettable, and the story struck a deep chord with audiences, especially Black audiences who saw their own family histories reflected on screen. The film validated experiences that Hollywood had ignored for decades. But despite its impact, Fox barely promoted it. Critics were split, and the film quickly disappeared from theaters. It only found its true audience years later, through VHS, DVD, and cable television. Hollywood had once again proven the pattern. Townsend could make classics, but the system would always try to bury them. By the mid-1990s, Robert Townsend had directed 2 culturally significant films and the highest-grossing stand-up comedy special in history. He should have been a household name, celebrated alongside Spike Lee and John Singleton. Instead, he was systematically erased. Film retrospectives on Black cinema skipped his name. Lists of influential directors ignored his contributions. Even when his films were referenced, they were often dismissed as sentimental. In the 2000s, Hollywood marketed itself as finally embracing Black creators. Millions were spent promoting new projects, but Townsend's foundational work was missing. His films weren't featured. His influence wasn't acknowledged. For an entire generation, Robert Townsend simply didn't exist. His story had been erased not by accident, but by design. Hollywood didn't want to credit the man who had called out its racism decades before it became trendy to do so. And yet, despite being pushed aside, Townsend never stopped working. He directed TV movies, created the sitcom The Parenthood, and mentored younger filmmakers. He kept creating, even if the industry refused to remember him. For years, it looked like Hollywood's plan had worked, but history has a way of correcting itself. In the late 2010s, something shifted. Social media users began rediscovering Townsend's films. Clips from Hollywood Shuffle went viral, with younger audiences shocked at how relevant it still was. Fans praised The Five Heartbeats as one of the greatest Black films ever made. Then, in a moment of poetic justice, the Criterion Collection announced a restored 4K release of Hollywood Shuffle. Suddenly, Townsend was back in the conversation. Film schools began teaching his work alongside Spike Lee's She's Gotta Have It. Critics wrote articles acknowledging how foundational his films were. Younger filmmakers like Jordan Peele and Ryan Coogler cited Townsend as a direct influence. After decades of being erased, Townsend was finally receiving the recognition he deserved. At 68, he was honored with Lifetime Achievement Awards and film retrospectives. But perhaps the most powerful part of his story isn't just that he was rediscovered. It's that he never stopped creating, never stopped mentoring, never stopped fighting for authentic Black stories. Even when the industry tried to erase him, Townsend proved that persistence could outlast erasure. Robert Townsend's story isn't just about one man's struggle. It's about the way Hollywood chooses who gets remembered and who gets erased. For decades, the system tried to bury his name, but it failed. Townsend's true legacy lives on in every Black filmmaker who refuses to play by Hollywood's rules, in every story that puts authenticity over acceptance, and in every artist who refuses to stay in a box. They tried to silence him. They tried to erase him. They tried to make him disappear. They failed. Today, when a young filmmaker picks up a camera to tell their own story, they are walking a path that Robert Townsend carved, with credit cards, with determination, and with an unshakable belief that Black stories matter. Townsend didn't just make movies. He created possibilities, and that is why his name can never truly be erased.